Okay, so now we will show you how to use Apex within processes and flows. For that, we will open our org, and then we will use the developer console. So this is where we will create the classes with the invocable method annotation and with the methods that will be shown in the processes and in the flows. So let's go to setup and let's open process builder. Okay, so let's now create a process, a simple process on the account object. Let's call this account process, and it will start when a record changes. So we will use this on the account, and it's not only on the creation, I want this to be on creation and update. And to simplify things, we will not add any criteria. Okay, so now if I go to the actions, you can see that I can add actions. This is the list of the actions that I can add. One of these is the Apex action. So as you can see here, if I have invocable methods, they will show there. Now let's go back to the developer console and let's see. So this is a class, and this class has this method, and then we have this annotation before this method. You can see that we have a label, and we have a description, and we have a category. So the name of this method is getAccountNames, and then it will take the list of IDs. It will return the list of string. And then what it will do, it will take the list of IDs. It will take this list, it will do a for loop on the accounts of the list of these IDs. And then it will output the names of these accounts, and then it will put them in this list of strings. It's so simple. Okay, so now because we have this annotation on the top, you can see that if I go back to the process, you can see here I have now a list of all the methods and classes that I can call. So basically what you see there is what is the label. So as you can see, we have invocable method, and then we have a label, getAccountNames. You can see here that I have getAccountNames. Now, if let's say I remove this line and I save, Ctrl S, then I go back and I refresh. I open the account process again, go to add actions, Apex. As you can see here, I don't have it because it's not tagged with this annotation. Now let's get it back and let's change this. Ctrl S and then F5. Now you can see that I have this in this list with the new label name. What happens if I don't add this? So let's get rid of all of that. Again, this is all optional. Ctrl X and Ctrl S to save. Go back and F5. I have here instead now the account query action, so the name of the class. So if I don't specify any label, I will have the name of the class, but I will not have the name of the method. So that's why it's better to add a label, and this label will be shown in the list of classes that I can call. And because each one of these classes can have only one method with this annotation, this is the method that will get called when we go to this class. So let's save this. And now let's refresh this page. Now we will get the label instead of the class name. Okay, get the account names. So let's do that. Now we have to specify the action name. It can be anything. And now this is where we specify the parameter. So we have IDs. IDs is what? IDs is simply this one. And then we can reference this by an ID or by a field reference. So let's pass it the ID of the account itself. And that's it. I don't have any output because this is again a process, it's not a flow. Once we move to the flow, you can see that I can specify the output. And again, the output is dependent on the return of the method. So if I go back to the method, you can see here that I am returning a list of string. But because I am on a process, I don't use this return. Now let's click on save. And this is how we can call Apex from a process. But if we save now, nothing will happen because I don't have anything there that will say that this method ran. For that, let's add a system.debug. Control S. So now what I'm doing, because this is a process, I don't get to use the return. I specified a debug, which will show me this in the debug log if this method ran. So let's save this again, and let's activate. Okay, now this is active. Let's go to any account. So I will open the applications. Oh, I don't have the account tab here, so okay. Let's use the account tab directly. And let's open this account. We will edit this account without changing anything, which will launch the process which will call this method. So what we have to do, we have to save, and once we save, you will notice that I will have a new log there. So this is the log, and you can see that this method ran. Okay, so this is how to call an Apex method from a process. Again, the most important thing is this annotation. If I don't have it, I cannot see this method and the process, and then I can see the label name from the list of actions. So this is the use of the label. And again, we have a specific set of parameters that we can specify. So we cannot specify, let's say, something that is not a list. We have a set of things that we can specify, and the same thing for the return type. As long as all of these are respected, this, and the most important thing is the annotation, we can see this in the process. Now let's do the same, but this time within a flow. So let's create a new screen flow. And this screen flow will use the math class that we have created. Again, this is a very simple class called mathUtil. It has an invocable method. You can see that it has a label. And then it has this method, which is called add. It will take a list of flow input. Flow input is a subclass, as you can see there. Why we use this? We use this to pass more than one input to this method. Again, we cannot pass more than one parameter to an invocable method. We can only pass one. This is how we can pass more than one, by creating a subclass, and then within this subclass we have invocable variables. So now we can specify each one of these int1, int2, and we can add as many as we want. So the purpose of this method is to take int1 and int2. As you can see here, I have a list of integers, and then I am having a for loop that will loop against all of the variables of the list fi. So again, list fi has two variables. You can see here I am looping against it, and then once I loop, I will add the first variable and the second variable of fi. So again, list of fi is a list of flow input. Each one of the flow input has two variables, int1 and int2. So int1 and int2. On each loop, fi int1 is being added to fi int2, and my int is the result. I am again adding my int to this list, which is called results, and I am returning this list. Okay, so now let's go to the flow and let's use this method in the flow. So we will add a screen. We will also specify two input. So these will be numbers. And I will make them required. Okay? It's so simple. Two input of type number. Okay. Now, let me call the Apex method within the flow. So I will drag action, and then let me go back to the method, which is called add, from the mathUtil class. And because I did not specify where I want this to appear, so if I go back to the first class, you can see that I have category. I can use the same, Control C, and I can specify here a category. First, let's not do that. Let's go there and let's see. You can see that I have uncategorized, and you can see now I can see this method there. But if I go back and let's say I want this to appear under account, Control S to save. Now, I think I need to refresh. Let's do them again. So this will be number 1 required, and this will be number 2 and required. Okay, let's see what we have to fix. And then let's go to the action and drag it. Now you will see that this action will be under account. Okay, so this is the use of the category. So Now we'll specify the name, and there we will specify int1 and int2. Why? Because if I go back to the class, I have list of flow input, and then I have invocable variable within this subclass. So each one of the list of flow input has two variables, int1 and int2, and these two should be specified within the flow. So let's say that int1 would be what? Would be the result of the input field that we have specified in the first screen, and the same for input for int2. So int1 is number 1, int2 is number 2. So this is the first input, this is the second input. Let's specify the output. Now because this is a flow, we can take the output. So in this case, let's create a new resource. This will be a variable. Let's call this result. Data type will be number. I don't need to specify anything else. It should not be available for output because I don't need to use this outside of the flow. And I click on done. So now what will happen? This Apex class will run. It will take number 1, number 2, and it will put them in the result variable. Now we have to show this in the next page. So next, now we will add a screen, and this will be result, and let's add a display text. It doesn't accept any space. So this is the what I will type, and then this is the variable that is being set by the Apex. Done, and let's now connect. That's it. Let's now save. And activate. Now let's see how we can use this. Let's go to the home page of this application, and let's try to edit. Now we will go to the flow on the left side, and then we will drag this and choose where we want it on the page. So let's say that we want it there. Click on it. And as you can see here, I will have all of the flows that I have, all of the screen flows. And that's it. Now I need to click on save. And I don't think I need to activate because it is already activated. Yeah, it's assigned to this app. So click on close and click on back. Now let's test this. So let's say I want to add 25 and 20. So if I click on next, this flow will run the Apex class in the background, and because we set the different variables in the flow, we will have the result and the result variable, which will be shown in the next screen. Next. That's it. So this is a very simple example on how to invoke Apex from a flow. Of course, we will not use Apex to add two numbers. This can be easily done within the flow itself, but this is just to show you that we can indeed call Apex from flow, and it is of course for much more complex scenarios. Now the last thing to show you is to call a flow from within Apex. So let's go and let's click on flows. So as you can see here, we have a list of flows. Let's go to the square flow. This is a auto launch flow. We cannot call a screen flow from within Apex, but it should be an auto launch flow. So what will this flow do? It will simply take a value which is square, and it will assign it to the result variable. So if I go to the manager, I can see that I have different elements in this flow. So you can see that I have input variable, I have a formula, and then I have an assignment. So if I click on input, this is mainly the input that we should pass to this flow. It's called input. And then I have this formula. It will do what? It will take the input and it will make input times input. So this is the square of the input. And then we have an assignment element that will assign the square to the result. So again, square is the formula, and then we are assigning this to another variable called result. So this is a very simple flow. It will take one input and then it will output one output, which is called result, which is the square of the input. So how we can call this from within Apex? Let's go to the anonymous Apex and let's see how we can do that. So I will go to anonymous Apex by pressing Ctrl E. So as you can see here, we have different steps that we need to do. The first step is to specify the input. Because we have only one input, we use this map, which is called params, which will take string and object, and then this map will be used to specify the input that we need to pass to the flow. Because we clearly specified that the input name is input, INPUT, this is where we type input, and then we map this to number 5. So this is the first step. The second step is to use this, which is creating a new flow interview. So as you can see here, we are creating a new flow interview called my flow. And then you can see here that I am using the name of the flow within the parameter of this method. And then I am passing the params map as the parameters of this flow. And then I am starting it. And then I will fetch the result back from the flow. So as you can see, the name is my flow. This is the flow interview. I'm using this flow interview name to get the variable which is called result. And then the last step is to use the debug to get the result. Let's try to run this. Let's say that I want to take the square of 6, which is 36. So I will highlight this code and I will click on execute highlighted. And then I will open the debug log. So the same thing can be done another way. So if I go up, I am using the name of the flow not as a parameter, but I'm using it as part of the method. So I am using the dot notation to append the flow to this method, and then I am passing the parameter params. So this is exactly the same thing, but this is another way. So you can see here flow.interview.square flow, new flow.interview.square params. If I go down, flow.interview my flow, I did not specify the name of the flow as that notation there, but I specified it as parameter. So these are the two ways to call flows from within Apex.